Okay, next up we have Wynne Kontos. Wynne and I go way back. She's taken one of my earliest Get Lit workshops, my first ever Works in Progress workshop, and has read at several Lost Lit readings. I've loved working with her, and I consider her a friend. This is her bio. Wynne Kontos is a native Midwesterner and currently a New York City resident. She's a licensed social worker practicing. Sorry. Okay. She's a licensed social worker practicing in the South Bronx and the proud owner of Fezziwig, the cutest Scottish Terrier on the East Coast. Her work is featured in the collection Lovesick Growing Up with a Parent Who Has Cancer and on the site New York Instant. This is her third reading with Lost Lit. Please check her out on lovnyinstant.tumblr.com. Please welcome Wynne.
Getting some dog loving out here before that. That was kind of exciting. Hi, I'm Wynne, and this is called Blue Dots. My silk shirt buttons up to my neck, and yet I feel all of my body parts glowing like beacons for sex. The February wind is cold as it whips around my shoulders, but it's not why I regret leaving my coat. The volunteer coordinator marches in front, the top of her head barely visible through the four 18-year-old bodies following her. A short white sidewalk connects the visitor's room, or VR, at Pendleton Juvenile Facility, to the medical wing, where a nurse will give us our TB vaccines. Dead grass flanks the sidewalk, the only visible nature that quickly gives way to massive brick walls. Tall, thin windows are cut into the brick like wounds. Clustered against the windows, pounding against the glass, are hordes of male inmates. Their faces press against one another. The sound of their fists reverberates in my chest. When I work up the courage to look, one of the boys has his fingers pressed up against his mouth, his tongue licking the web of skin between his pointer and middle finger. Afterwards, Lisa emails me to say Pendleton will be on MSNBC, Friday at 9. Lisa drives the van we take to the facility each week. The program starts with dramatic music, describing the juvenile prison in intimidating adjectives. The boys' white sneakers covered in tan jumpsuits move across the screen, and I fear the program seems stuck between entertainment and truth. It focuses on the segregation, or SEG unit, where combative offenders spend their time isolated in small cells. Security tapes show black and white figures cross seg, surround corrections officers, and pummel them to the ground. After my first meeting with the young man I'm mentoring, I know this isn't normal. Neither is the behavior I witness on my way to the medical wing. The only normal thing Pendleton can rely on is the vulgarity of teenage boys, that no matter the circumstance seems as steady as the tide. Next week at the facility, I stuff my purse in a locker without a lock. I hold out my arms to be wanded and walk through the metal detector. The VR looks better lit than it did on TV, and is filled with stacked columns of turquoise plastic chairs. The vending machines hum against the wall where they stand like soldiers. We make small talk while we wait for our mentees to come off their blocks. A powdery snow falls outside the windows. From VR, there's a full view of the sidewalks between each unit. The parking lot is separated by fences topped with foot-tall piles of razor wire. The wire is dull and quiet, much different than the glaring aluminum weapon it seemed on television. The guard calls to Lisa over the vending machines. Her mentee will be detained for a few minutes. He has a bump on his head. The snow falls another minute before our mentees come tumbling through the off-unit door where they check in with the guard. Aside from being dressed in tan, full-body jumpsuits, they seem like regular teenage boys, gangly, loud, falling over one another to be the first one to the desk. Lisa's mentee walks over to her sheepishly, pulls aside his bangs to reveal the red lump growing on his forehead. The black and white seg figures from TV flash in front of my eyes, and then I see my mentee walking towards me. We've only met once, so it occurs to me he might have forgotten my name, but Brandon recognizes my face. He laughs and points at Lisa's mentee. He says he fell down on a bench, but I think it was because he was roughhousing. I turn away from the snow to begin our session for the next hour. Brandon is tall, 6'2", he says, and he's lean. Maybe past the point of being lean, but a few months before emaciated. He's blonde, and a cut-off gray sweatshirt sticks out from under his jumpsuit. He has a few cuts on his hands that he licks when he's nervous, and he bends his head after talking for a few minutes to rub at his right eye. I wait to see if he'll bring up the TV broadcast, but he doesn't, because his mom came to visit him on Saturday or Sunday, he can't remember. Brandon's mom hasn't been to visit him in a while. She's been in a coma, he says. She was in a car accident a few months back. Much like a plotline on TV, there's a strange mix of true and false, entertainment and truth. Even sitting here admits the real deal. He's convinced himself of the story, and his emotions seem genuine in the way they etch across his face, which is much more youthful than his body. The only creativity shown by the inmates on MSNBC is the gang symbols penciled on the white seg walls. Brandon's creativity is unlimited. He says there's not enough space in his brain to contain all his thoughts. I've never kept a journal, he tells me, leaning back in his chair and spreading his legs in a way that ages him. But if I did, I bet you think I was crazy. He sits up suddenly, animated with another idea, and draws a rectangle on the linoleum table between us. Say this is a page of directions, okay? And this is the first part I'm trying to explain. He fingers the imaginary page in front of us. Most people will probably be confused, because I'll read the first part or think about it, and then forget to tell them, and just tell them the second part. He sits back, analogy finished, a big smile on his face. I think it's good you have lots of ideas and thoughts, I tell him. Yeah, I don't know, he admits, his smile fading. I think sometimes it gets me in trouble. A few weeks from now, I will watch his long, spidery fingers twist a piece of notebook paper until it forms a jagged point. He drags the point across his inner arm, a red welt rising in its wake, and I'll make him a deal if he never brings a weapon into the VR again, I won't report it. Brandon's good qualities seem to turn him into something he can't control, and he knows it. His overactive thoughts lead to thievery. His artistic eye allows him to devise escape plans. His imagination leads him, I realize with a pang, to sometimes lie to me. Brandon describes his grandpa as a welder, his mother's friendly visit, and his stepfather's plan to adopt him. Next week, Brandon says most memories of his grandpa he's blocked out. His mom used to sleep in the other room while her husband beat them. When his stepfather took them to visit his family in Mexico, he didn't hit them because he spent most of his time sleeping on the couch. I decide to focus on Brandon's creativity anyways when he describes how he found his favorite color. You know in a comic where it's in a strip? He leans forward. So here's the comic, and here's the pictures, and you know where the color trails off? I nod to show that I understand. Where the picture stops and starts to become dots and all the dots go blue? I nod again. Those dots are sort of a green-blue, and that's how I chose my favorite color. I can't stop the smile that spreads over my face, a smile that our coordinator says makes us seem like friends and not mentors, but I'm not sorry. Despite his thoughts working overtime, Brandon has lost motivation. I know this because he tells me. He can put himself somewhere else, he can imagine a way out of his cell, and he can tell me exactly what counselors have told him over and over again. When I ask him what positive behaviors should replace the bad ones, he tells me exactly what I want to hear. When I ask him to focus on goals for our next meeting, Brandon says he knows what to do. I already know how I should act, but I figure what's the point? In the rare honest moments he's truly himself, he loses what he calls his labels. I'm used to having a schedule here. They tell me what to do. I've been locked up for so long, I feel like if I were on the outs, I wouldn't know what to do. That makes you feel afraid? I ask, and he nods, putting his head down and rubbing his red eye. If you were to be released tomorrow, they just told you could go, what about not being here would seem new? He keeps rubbing his eye, and I panic, thinking I've touched something too deep. He isn't going to answer, but he puts up his pointer finger to tell me he's thinking. He props his chin in his hand, exhales, smiles, and says, everything.